the first thing I want to talk about today is, we're obviously with Rankability, we're highly focused on keyword targeted content. Okay. That is what we're trying to do. We're picking a keyword and then we're building out the most relevant piece of content possible around that keyword. Right. But not just the relevance. We're also trying to have some levels of information gain with that particular keyword as well. So we want to be able to add some uniqueness to that particular keyword that we're going after. Another thing is too, like I talk a lot about finding the differentiation. And I think sometimes there's a tendency to want to look for okay, what's going to be that big, huge angle that's going to be radically different than what everyone else is doing. And I think that's a good idea in a lot of cases, especially when you're dealing with more competitive keywords. But sometimes the differentiation can actually be even simpler than that. It can sometimes be that, you look at your top 5 competitors for that keyword and they all have just horrendous user experience, right, with their content, or their pages load exceptionally slow. Or maybe the majority of them don't actually prioritize the content. They've got a bunch of fancy elements that push the content way below the fold, right? So you can find these little different kind of micro weaknesses and you can exploit that to make your content better. And I'll tell you, you're not going to across multiple niches, most niches in general, you're not going to find many people doing things exceptionally well. Okay. That is very rare. I would say in the SEO industry, there's a lot of blogs that do really, really well. But that's because it's the SEO industry. But as you start to venture into other industries, you start to venture into plumbers, for example, in St. Louis, then all of a sudden you start to see how much opportunity there really is to really, I hate to say this, but crush a lot of the people there. And so you can take a lot of these ideas and apply them to different industries and you will dominate quite easily. Okay. So just want to mention that. Now, going back to what I was saying here though, with Rankability, and I'll be the first to tell you, just using Rankability alone, which essentially means we're creating the most relevant piece of content possible, that's one sliver of the pie of SEO. Okay. I would never make the claim that Rankability is going to solve all your SEO problems yet. That will be the goal. That is the goal for us, to solve more of the SEO problems. But right now we're solving a very, very specific problem. But with that said, this is the foundation that can help you get the SEO results. Now, the question is, once you've got your SEO content production in place, you're creating relevant content, you're focusing on quality, what do you do next? Okay. Well, the most important thing that you need to be doing in parallel with SEO content production is trying to build website authority. Okay. It is the most important thing. I cannot stress this enough. And in a perfect world, if I were to devise the perfect SEO strategy, you would see a influx of new SEO content going up, consistently over time. And along the same line, you would see the referring domains going at the same speed. As far as growth, they're both growing at the same time. But what you'll see in a lot of situations, you'll see a website where its content's flying high, but links are dragging, right? And so what's happening there is basically we're signaling to Google that we are actually not an authority. We are not actually people don't like our stuff, right? And that's what we don't want to see. We want to see that there's a significant distribution of links to many pages on our website. So for example, if you go and this can be a fun little activity if you're bored, okay, but you can go and audit a really good website, okay, one that's really doing well in SEO. They create really good content. It could be in any industry. And I can almost guarantee that when you audit their site, and the way you want to do this is use Screaming Frog, integrate the Ahrefs API, and then you run a crawl on their site. And what you'll find is that they will have a significant amount of backlinks going to many different pages on their website. So the distribution will be quite distributed across the site as a whole, as opposed to a site that, let's say a local plumber, where they have 99% of their links going to their homepage and they've got 1% of the links going to a couple pages. Now, if you think about in terms of the magnitude of this, let's say that plumber has 300 pages on his site. Okay. 300 pages. but almost all of the backlinks going to one page. So once again, what are we signaling to Google? We're signaling that this site is not important. It should not be considered. It's just not a good look. Okay. So, and to put it in perspective, like on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you look at like Backlinko, for example, and Brian doesn't really, I think he's still involved a little bit at Backlinko, but not a lot. But prior to Backlinko getting acquired by SEMrush, if you looked at his link distribution, and I actually did this one time, I think it was like 90% of the pages on his website had backlinks, which is just unheard of. I mean, it's like such a crazy distribution, like very rare, but the proof is in the pudding, right? Like you see the results of that. And so not saying we need to go to that level, like that's very extreme, but if we can at least get a nice distribution of maybe 50% of our links going to other pages on the site, that's going to greatly improve our performance. So along those lines, let me talk a little bit about how to do that. Okay. So couple things. So these are some concepts, and any Academy members that are here will understand a few of these concepts, but I want to dig into them a little bit deeper. Okay. Give me a 2 in the chat if you can see my screen. 2 in the chat if you can see my screen. Let's see here. 2 in the chat. Okay, beautiful. Thank you. All right. So I actually was just on a podcast, and it was mainly about link building. So I'm like super pumped up right now on link building. So here we go. Okay. So Dream 100. All right. This is, if you can understand this concept, you will never build bad backlinks again. You won't. It's impossible. Okay. No matter what industry you go into, you can always apply this principle. Okay. So let's say you're beginning a new SEO campaign. You say, okay, we need backlinks, right? Everyone says the same thing. We need backlinks. How do we do it? Okay. First thing you want to do is find the top 100 websites in this industry that you're trying to attack. Okay. The top 100. So what I mean by top 100, I'll use in the context of SEO because it's just easier. If I wanted to improve, if I wanted to get links for rankability specifically, my Dream 100 would be, Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land, SEO Roundtable, Backlinko, SEMrush, Ahrefs. You go down the list. Okay. All the most powerful websites that have a ton of backlinks, a ton of trust, and have all the good things that I want, right? And what you'll find, and this is actually pretty crazy, because even in the SEO industry, for me to build out a top 100 is hard. It's hard to find 100 websites that I would truly say, I really want to link on this website. Okay. But this is actually even deeper than this, because one of the kind of principles that you can use to qualify a link opportunity is very, very simple. You have to ask yourself, if you were to get a link on this website, what's the likelihood that if traffic flows through this link, that it's actually going to convert for whatever thing we're trying to convert on our website? So if we're, in the case of Rankability, we're selling content optimization software, does it make sense for us to get a link on a mommy blog? Okay. What's the likelihood that a link on a mommy blog is going to buy Rankability? Okay. Someone who travels through that link and ends up on Rankability, what's the likelihood that they're going to convert? Probably not that high. Okay. I would not bet on that. I would definitely not do it. Okay. So if you live by that simple kind of criteria, well, you're going to find that you're going to end up eliminating a significant amount of opportunities, because you're just going to realize, like, oh yeah, why are we getting this link in the first place? Like, and if you think about it, if you're doing it for any reason other than getting traffic, referral traffic to your site, then you're probably only doing it to manipulate Google. It's just a fact. Because for example, you wouldn't just pay for ads haphazardly unless you knew it would drive you traffic, right? But we do that with link building all the time. Yeah, it looks good. Let's get it because it has a good DR or it has a good, whatever, some sort of metric. But we don't think about, like, is this actually going to help us, help the business? It's going to help us achieve some sort of goal in the business. So from that criteria, you're gonna start to really see, like, okay, I can filter through a lot more opportunities. So the point is, at the beginning here, get the Dream 100, figure out who they are. And what you'll do, this is inevitably will happen, especially like the smaller the industry gets, you'll have to expand out further. So like maybe you only get 50 websites just that are specific to SEO. Okay. So now, okay, let's venture out now into digital marketing as a whole. Okay. So now we're going to expand on a little bit more. We're going to find more opportunities, but those opportunities would be more considered like your tier 2 opportunities, right? Because they're not as highly relevant as possible. And the way you could visualize this is what I call like the relevancy pyramid. So like at the top of the pyramid, you have your absolute best link opportunities. So once again, the context of rankability, this would be like us getting a link from our competitors. All right, that would be the best link that we could ever get is from another competitor, right? But in most cases, getting links from your competitors is not so simple. So there are ways to do it, but it's trickier. But then you go down the pyramid, and then slowly as you go, there are more opportunities as relevance expands. Okay, so just think about it that way. And the reason why this is so important is because this Dream 100 is what I would call your like tier 1 opportunities that really are so important to treat them like they're gold. Treat them like they're gold. Do not do anything that would jeopardize a relationship with the Dream 100. You need to take it incredibly slow and think about this as if you're planning on marrying the Dream 100. Like this is a slow process. Okay. All right. So let's go on to the next part here. So establish your Dream 100. And then going along these lines, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. This is not contextually, I'm talking about the quality of the link opportunities here. I'm not talking about, tier 2 link building per se. So that's a different topic altogether. This is more about the quality. So the reason I want to bring this up is because let's say our tier 1 opportunities, these are like our Dream 100. We want to start to approach these very differently than how we would approach tier 3, because these are extremely delicate, and we do not want to jeopardize or burn any bridges with these prospects or the points of contact at these websites. So we're going to have to be very careful with how we approach them. I'm going to show some tactics here in a second that you can use. But as we go on down the line, you can be a little more direct with your outreach. So maybe in tier 1, it's more of like dipping your toes in the water. Okay. Just send a little quick email, or, hey, comment on their stuff on LinkedIn, or, you're a lot of touch points to be very careful, kind of ease your way in. But for a tier 3 link opportunity, you might just go direct, like straight for the kill. Okay. Like, so I'm going to send an outreach email, paid collaboration in the subject line, right? Like I'm going to go right for it right away. And in the body, I'm going to say, hey, I was wondering what your rates are for a collaboration. And I would go through that whole thing, get right into the money element. And that's probably what you want to do with those tier 3, even possibly tier 2 opportunities, just like go right for it. Because that's more of a volume game compared to the tier 1 where like you don't want to mess around. Like take your time with those. Okay. So there's a few tactics we can use. Number 1 is authority. Okay. And authority is in the context of like an individual's authority. So for example, and this is, I hate to say this, but this is like a rich get richer type of situation in SEO. Okay. So when you have any type of brand equity, it doesn't matter whether it's a personal brand or the actual company itself. Like if there's any type of trust there, when you perform outreach, you will get a better response rate. It's just a fact. Okay. So when SEMrush does outreach under the SEMrush brand, they get a better response rate than Joe Schmo's new software company, right? It's just a fact. It's the same thing with, for example, and not to say I'm an authority, but I'm just saying, like, if I were to do outreach, I would probably get a better response now than when I was just starting in 2011 and no one knew who I was. Okay. It's just the nature of it. So the point is, like, in the context of working with clients, the first thing you want to do when you bring a client on is identify who the figurehead is. And hopefully they have one. Okay. Because that would be really, really important. You want to find someone who's like, you're trying to find that perfect blend of someone who is a subject matter expert but they also have the ability to communicate. Okay. And you need to have both of those because there's a lot of people who are subject matter experts, but you get them on a podcast and it's like they have a hard time articulating their thoughts and it's just hard for it to kind of come out. So you need to find someone who's like that, who's willing to put in that effort. And sometimes you will have that right away, and you'll have a maybe a CEO or some sort of figurehead at the company that's willing to go on podcasts, willing to put themselves out there as a, let's say, call it a personal brand. So the reason why that's so important is because to get on these, going back to the tier 1 websites, there's 2 tactics you can use if you have authority. Okay. The first one is see if they have a podcast. It's the simplest technique in the world. If they have a podcast, you can almost guarantee you can get a link from them because you go on, you share your experience, you do your thing, you get a link. It's the easiest thing to do. This is like my favorite link building tactic right now. Like I just go on podcasts, I get links. Yeah, I invest maybe 45 minutes to an hour of my time. I get a nice, beautiful backlink. Okay, it's a very, very good exchange of value, and I'm giving them value and I'm giving them content that they can use for their audience. And then if I promote, it's also a form of ego bait too, right? So like if I'm the one being interviewed, I'm going to share that interview to my audience, which then is going to drive my audience back to their brand, right? So the exchange of value is very, very clear when it comes to podcasts. So that's the first place, is to start there. The second place is if you have a little bit of authority, you can also pitch just becoming a contributor on that website, that media website, that really trusted brand. And guest post is like it's like a bad word now in SEO. Like don't say guest post, but that's really like what it is, right? When you become a contributor, you are a guest author. They just don't like saying that. Okay. So, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to become a guest author. So the way to become a guest author, there's a whole lot of strategy I could share about that. But the thing is you need a little bit of a portfolio to prove that your writing is above average, right? Because if you think about a lot of these sites in the Dream 100, they likely have very strict editorial standards, and they're likely in the Dream 100 because they have focused on quality for many, many, many years, right? So you can't just come in with some like AI generated junk and think it's going to work. Like you're going to have to come in with some good stuff to be able to pitch yourself. So this is why authority is the first thing to start with, because it's immediately like we can tap into that right away and hopefully score a few links if possible. Okay. But of course, not everyone is blessed with authority out of the gate. Okay. So you have to use other tactics. All right. So the next one is gaps. Okay. I'm a big fan of finding gaps across many different elements of SEO, but in the context of this, gaps is in reference to you look at the prospective website that you want to get a link on, and then you dig through their website and see how well they've covered the topics that are directly related to the thing that you sell. So, for example, if it's content optimization, in the case of Rankability, I'm going to go to Search Engine Journal. I'm going to search for content optimization, and I'm going to see what have they produced around this topic. And if I see they've got a significant, portfolio of content about this, they've really, they are a topic authority on it, I'm just going to go on to the next one and do the same thing until I find that there's a clear gap in one of these Dream 100. You will find it, because eventually you're going to find it. They're going to have some sort of gap there where you can come in and create value that they have not created before, right? And this is so effective because they will say, yeah, you're right. We actually don't have anything about that. That sounds interesting, right? And you see this a lot with people trying to do guest posting. I get this all the time with people sending me outreach emails, and they'll be like, hey, I want to guest post on Gotcha SEO. Of course, I don't accept guest posts, but they try anyway. And they give me like 3 ideas. And I always look at people's outreach because it helps me refine mine and see like the mistakes to make mine better. But one of the things that they will do is they'll put like, the article idea is what is SEO, or how to do SEO, or some insert generic thing about SEO, right? And like, it just means they didn't do their homework. It's very clear they didn't do their homework, because I've been talking about SEO for a decade. I don't need a generic blog post about what is SEO on my website. That's not going to add any value to my readers, to the people that visit my site. It's not going to do anything good. But if someone came with something that like I've never even considered writing about, I'd be like, I'll entertain it, right? Because I think if it could add value to my audience, I might entertain it. So you're doing the same thing here. Find those gaps, and then whenever you send a content pitch like that, just always do 3 ideas. So I'll usually do like 3 different kind of angles, 3 different ideas. It's the rule of 3. So I use the rule of 3 for many different things, but the rule of 3, and you see if they hit. And the cool thing is, like, even if you send the outreach and you don't get a response from a few of them, which you won't in many cases, you didn't burn any bridges, right? You can just come back again in 6 months and be like, hey, listen, I know I sent that one a couple months ago, but I actually have 3 new ideas, right? just keep going. Eventually, if you ask enough times, you eventually get there. So that's the first one, is on the gap side. Okay. Next one is on what I call like to link. Okay. This is something that a lot of people totally underestimate. And it's like one of my favorite things to do. In fact, I've studied so many websites just by doing this one thing. So you put a website into, and actually I'm going to show you specifically, exploding topics here. Okay. Very good example here. So let's say I wanted to get a link on exploding topics. You go to Backlink Analytics and SEMrush. You can also do this in Ahrefs, same thing. And then go to outbound domains. Okay. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm looking at what they like to link to. What are the types of content they tend to link to the most? And so I'll look at this, just open one of these up, and I'll start to get an idea of what are the content frameworks they tend to link out to. Now, it looks like a lot of this is kind of linking to the homepage, but if we look at this, it looks like they like to link out to data-driven content based on what I'm seeing right away. Okay. So if I see that and of course, this makes perfect sense, exploding topics, a data company linking out to data, very obvious. They don't need to do a lot of research, but the point is to have that confirmation that, like, okay, they do like to link out to data. They like to have reference points for their content. What I could do is I could start to create bait that is specific to this one Dream 100 website, right? So maybe I find that 80% of their outbound links are to data-driven content. So now I'm going to start creating data-driven content to try to lure them in. Okay. And it's the same thing. So that's what we're doing. And then if you go to another site and, hey, they like to link out to free tools and free software, I'm going to create free tools and software, right? So you're looking for that confirmation that it's a good idea to create whatever asset you're planning on creating. You can actually do the same thing just by looking at their site as well, by looking at index pages and just seeing what tends to attract the most links. Okay. And you can see there's really one type of content that tends to attract links on their site. It's data. Like, it's all data. It's all statistics. There's no secrets here. So you can take these same ideas, and let's say you're competing against them, you could of course create a similar asset. But just remember that we can take any of these. If we take, internet traffic from mobile devices. Okay. They have 2,600 referring domains. Now, if you're like, all right, clearly this is a good idea because people have linked to it. You may get this false notion that you're also going to get 2,600 referring domains, but it does not translate the same way, because what happens is when you're a first mover on a topic, you inherit the whole kingdom of links. Okay. It's the 80-20 rule, right? So whoever's a first mover on that topic is going to get the large share of those backlinks. But even then, even if let's say you only get 20% of the links that they have, that's still a win, right? That's still a successful link building campaign. So that's the downside of looking at existing models and replicating them, because you are not going to get the same results that they got because you're late on that topic. But this is why you want to have a nice blend of both ideas. So you want to go after link bait ideas that are proven to work, but also go after link bait ideas that are, let's say, more experimental in nature. Okay. And so when I talk about experimental, that's looking at stuff that's worked in other industries and then applying it in your industry. So I'll show you a few examples of these. Okay. I keep track of a lot of link bait stuff that I see that I like. very, very geeky activity of mine. So don't judge me. Okay. But this is an example here. So this guy here, he is the master of creating these motion graphics. Okay. And he's done so many of these, but this is like and it's not simple, by the way. This is a very complex motion graphic. And you can tell a lot of effort and a lot of time was put into this, but like, it's beautiful. Like this is a beautiful piece of content. Okay. So you could take something like this idea, which is basically creating a motion graphic around one very simple concept, and then just apply that in your industry, right? Make that relevant to your industry. In fact, you could take this idea, like you could save this page and pretend like you're going to print it, save as a PDF, and then upload it to ChatGPT and say, hey, give me 10 ideas that are specific, that are like this piece of content, but are specific to a plumber in St. Louis, right? So you just take the concept, you apply it to your one industry, and then ChatGPT will give you some stuff to work with that you can kind of figure out. So just a small example. And one thing you'll notice too, this is another really important point here. It took me a long time to figure this out, but through a lot of analysis of pages that tend to attract the most links, I always thought that creating like super in-depth informational content was like really good for link building. And come to find out, it's actually not that great. It's really good for ranking in Google. It's really good for helping the users. It's really great for that, like informational content that's a listicle or a guide, all good for the user, all good for ranking, but not great for link building. And it's a very weird dynamic in that way. People don't tend to link to how-to stuff very much. What they do like to link to are a lot of things I'm showing here. So you'll see it's animation, data and visuals, videos, calculators. I mean, look, like this one here. I mean, it's so ugly. It's not pretty whatsoever, but this thing has so many backlinks. Okay. Once again, proving like there's no content here. It's just a helpful resource that does the job. And that is it. So like if I was competing here, let's say I was working on a SEO campaign for a financial services company or something, I would look at this asset and say, okay, listen, these guys have a ton of backlinks, and look at this. Going back to us talking about how to differentiate, look at the experience that we're seeing here. Okay. This is not a great experience. We've got weird ads. The site's not responsive. The URL's not secure, like the domain's not secure. Like there's a lot of stuff here that we could exploit to make a much better experience. So we could basically take this same exact idea, compound interest calculator, make it look nicer with modern UI, and then have no ads, zero ads, just straight value, right? That's what I would do in this scenario. I would just straight value, give them exactly what they came for, and just eliminate the ads altogether, right? So this is an example of like you take the same exact idea, but just make a better mousetrap, right? And that's kind of how you can do this. So going down the list, once again, data, calculators, case studies. This is a really good one. I actually have a name for this now. This is House Fresh. If you saw them, they like basically created this blog post that was really, really good link bait. And when I saw this happen, I was watching how it was performing, seeing how people were sharing it. And I was like, I see. This is a really good one. Actually, I watched how this post accumulated backlinks over time. And you'll see it's pretty freaking awesome, I have to admit. Because what I call it now is marketer bait. Okay. And marketer bait is really effective. Let's just say that much. So we'll actually look at their whole root domain and look at the pages that have attracted the most backlinks. Okay. Now take a look at this. You want to talk about proving that creating content specifically to appeal to marketing blogs and SEO blogs is a really good idea. Even if you're not even in the industry, like if you're not even in the industry, if you can create something that appeals to Google or SEO or marketers or whatever it is, because the pool of marketing blogs, digital marketing blogs, SEO blogs, tech blogs is the biggest pool of opportunities that exists in any industry. Nothing even compares because it makes sense. We all know how to build websites. Not every plumber knows how to build a website, right? So it makes perfect sense that there's more opportunity. So you look at this, their two most linked to pages on their website aren't even about the thing that they do at all. They're both about Google killing their website, essentially. Okay, so it's just another good example. Now, if we look at their performance, how did this help them regain results? Okay, so they got penalized by Google, and we'll see how this translated into performance for them. So what's going on here? Sorry, I'm in the wrong one. So we'll look at this, and I don't believe they had a full recovery, but they had I would say definitely a sizable recovery. They didn't go all the way back to where they were before, but this is not something to be, I think it's good. I would be somewhat satisfied if I went to 0 and then I got back to 70% of where I was before. That's a pretty solid recovery, right? And I can tell you if I were to say what's the number one contributor, I know a lot of people I've seen it's because they called out Google and Google manually, and Google wouldn't do that. First of all, let's be honest here. This website, no offense to HouseFresh, but they're an ant compared to Google. Google wouldn't do that. They don't care that much. And so this is clearly the byproduct of an algorithmic change. And it's the byproduct, clearly the only variable that has changed here, the same content, they've been doing the same stuff. The only difference here is the backlinks, right? It's the only difference. And if they hadn't done this clickbait, very smart angle that they did here, they wouldn't have 80,000 backlinks. So this is just a very good example of backlinks are really, really powerful. Even if they're not even from just your exact, close vertical, just getting links from trusted websites in general that have a huge impact. So the point is this is another really good angle to go after. And that's the angle that I wouldn't always deploy, but it's definitely one that you can kind of have in your back pocket, right? So just going down the board, these are all a bunch, that you can attack here. And you can tell the commonality here is data. Data is the number one that you can rely on. Almost all the time in most industries, there's always data opportunities. So that's basically it. I think those are some tactics you guys can obviously use to, build more site authority. But it's really important to just focus on quality over quantity. Even in the context of rankability, for example, I've talked about this before, but rankability, I'm not even creating any content on the blog yet, not even touching it, because my focus right now is building site authority. I want to grow site authority. So one of the assets that I have to build site authority is, number one, I can leverage my personal brand, right? So if you can leverage your personal brand, you can get links to your homepage, which is really, really valuable. Okay. Number two is I can leverage certain things that we have. So the affiliate program, I can leverage the affiliate program as an asset to go out there and promote. So looking at best, listicles and finding the best SEO affiliate programs, the best affiliate programs that have recurring commissions. And I start to build out a whole different list of prospects for all the different listicles that do that, reach out to them, say, hey, we've got an SEO affiliate program that gives 40% recurring commission, right? And then we can get a link. So once again, listicles are a really good one too to go after. And if you have some sort of collateral you can work with. That's another thing too, just one last note on this. When you begin an SEO campaign and a link building campaign, the first thing to do is establish what existing stuff you can use for your link building, right? That's the first thing to figure out. So do we have available jobs? Do we have an affiliate program? Do we have some sort of personal brand or figurehead that we can tap into? Start to list all the things that you could leverage for link building. And you'll find a lot of companies they've got some stuff to work with, right? There's some stuff you can work with for sure. So just some ideas to, make sure that we're attacking one of the most important ranking variables, because the last thing I want to see happen is like you guys create a bunch of really awesome SEO content, but neglects link building, right? Because I'm telling you, like even the best, most optimized content still needs link love. Like I'll even show you in the lab, I've got so many assets here, and a lot of them, like they're sitting on the second page on some of them, right? And that's not because the content is bad per se. It's just because they need more link love, right? And that's the case. So for me, I have to decide, like, is it worth it to make the investment in links for some of these pages? The answer is sometimes no, right? I just won't do it. But in some cases, it is worth it. So, but if you've got everything else squared away, links are the thing that you have to invest in. So anyway, questions for me.
Yeah. Hi, Nathan. My name's
Hey,
Brandon. I work with addiction centers and I do their SEO. I'm just trying to think what would be, and I don't know, maybe we could just quickly brainstorm because I know you haven't probably thought of this before, but what might be like a good link building asset, or like a magnet, or like you said, marketer bait or journalist bait for an addiction center?
So is it in a specific location?
Atlanta.
Atlanta. So Atlanta Addiction Center. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the first thing is to build authority in the context of local. The first thing you want to do is really focus in on the local area. And this is really important for a few reasons, especially if you're trying to improve like addiction center or addiction treatment center Atlanta, I would imagine is kind of the keyword you're probably attacking. So there's a few things you want to do. Number one, you want to build that localized type of content. And so what some people will do, and by the way, you can go national with some of the ideas. I'm not totally against that, but I think just initially to keep it focused on just Atlanta. So, and this is obviously, could be a sad topic. So just bear with me as I do this, because there's just some, I'm going to say some things that, but I got to go there because I have to. So I would focus heavily on specific drug types and specific levels of addiction for those drug types. So in Atlanta specifically. So fentanyl addiction statistics in Atlanta. Cocaine addiction statistics in Atlanta. Heroin. You just plug in whichever drug type it is and go from there. Could be alcohol too, right? Alcoholism in Atlanta. What do the statistics look like that? And this does not need to be a dissertation. It can be a very simple, like, here's the raw data. This is, and you're basically taking all the existing data, which probably is very publicly available. You can gather all that. You bring it into your curated asset and you show just the data. And obviously the call to action there is pretty obvious at the end of that.
Yeah.
So, so that's where I would begin is like, and obviously it's a touchy topic, but that, I hate to say this, but like that stuff attracts links. It does.
Yeah.
So,
hey, I mean, at the end of the day, if it helps fill their addiction center with people who need it, like, that's a net win for us. So
exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel bad saying this, but like that industry, I would have a lot of fun in as far as the types of, link bait that you can create, because there's just so much that you can do on so many different fronts. So yeah, statistics all day, data. And of course you can expand outside of Atlanta. Like obviously you can look at Georgia as a whole, right? And saying, looking at like, okay, what cities have the worst cases of addiction to fentanyl, like maybe Atlanta versus another city. Maybe there's, every city's got its issues. So maybe certain cities have worse issues. So yeah, expanding out to Georgia as a whole is where I would, think about as well. So, so yeah, you'll plenty to work with just that alone. So yeah, that's probably a good.
That's awesome. Yeah. Quickly, I found a keyword for sobriety days calculator. I think that would do good too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good idea too. Yeah. Anything that's just a helpful resource for your target market is usually a good thing. And that's why, like I was mentioning earlier, like, people get into this, like, oh, I'm going to create this really long piece of content. Like that's like, it seems like the right thing to do, but it's not.
Hmm.
It's not
Okay.
effective for link acquisition. If this works well for you, if you do it really well and like just focus on really building a good data driven asset,
Hmm.
um, you will start to rank very easily because there's probably not a lot of people that are getting that specific.
Hmm.
And when you rank, what you're doing is you're planting seeds in Google. And
Hmm.
so when a reporter in, for whatever the Atlanta like newspaper that you have over there, they're searching on the fentanyl crisis in Atlanta and they're searching for like a very specific statistic, who's going to be there? It's going to be you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to do. So if you plant enough seeds, you'll start to get those, and those are the best links you can get directly from Atlanta, trusted entities in Atlanta. That's
Hmm.
exactly what you want. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and you can even reach out to other Atlanta, based websites as well, and say like, hey, we just created this data-driven piece of content.
Mm.
Thought it'd be, a good fit for you guys. Thought you'd be interested in this. So yeah, you can use it as your collateral for outreach as well. So
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you,
Um,
Nathan.
yep. Yeah, my pleasure.
Appreciate you.
All right. Jay, go for it.
Hey, kind of question in line with that. Let's say I'm trying to build authority to a localized commercial page, and I have an asset that has more of a national query. Um, is linking, with generalized anchor text into that localized commercial page a problem, or what would be your approach to when you're working in an industry where localized information isn't as relevant?
Give me the industry.
You could use like personal injury, for example.
Personal injury. Okay, so give me the scenario. So you're saying like what anchor text to use for a St. Louis personal injury lawyer page?
Yes, if it was like a blog post talking about information where it just didn't make sense to add Atlanta or whatever, if it's
I see. Okay. Okay. So you did your outreach, you found a blog. Let's say you wrote a blog post on that national based blog. How do you drive the best link equity to that without using an aggressive anchor text, particularly geo modifier in this case? So you wouldn't want to jam St. Louis in there is what you're saying. Correct.
yeah, I should
Okay.
mention I'm talking about like internal linking from my own
Oh,
blog.
internal linking. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, my philosophy on internal links has changed over the years as I've gotten new data to basically what happens when it comes to SEO for me. Like if I get new data that proves that something I was doing is no longer the most effective way, I'll just switch to the new way. But I need the data to make that decision. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because with internal links, it used to be the best thing to do is just use exact match every time, right? Use it like if your keyword is script timer, you use script timer for all of your internal links, right? And for a long time that worked. And then there was a shift with Google where it seemed like Google almost started to penalize pages that were too aggressive, even with internal link anchor text. Because it used to be that with external links, backlinks, using keyword rich anchor text was a red flag, right? It could definitely trip up Google. And it is one of the best ways to get penalized by Google. If you get too aggressive with anchor text, you're playing a very dangerous game. Okay. But then Google also did not, I wouldn't say they turned the dial that much on internal links, but they definitely turned the dial a little bit to the point where it's like, okay, zero diversification is probably a bad thing. So what I would recommend doing now is really diversifying the anchor text like a lot. Try not even to repeat the same anchor text like to a one page in particular. So like we have our best SEO tools for agencies blog post on Gotcha SEO. Like I'm not going to keep slamming that page with the same keyword over and over. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to sometimes say top, SEO tools for agencies. Sometimes I'll say just SEO tools for agencies. Other times I might just like cite something in that blog post. Like I'm going to mix it up a lot. And so there's nothing inherently wrong with using the city modifier in an internal link. That's not necessarily a bad thing. What I would consider a bad thing would be the repetition of the same anchor text over and over. So as long as you're not doing that, you'll probably be fine, to be honest. So yeah.
And do you think that's fine injecting that if the article again like just doesn't mention the city at all, but then towards the end you mentioned, Atlanta personal injury lawyer?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell your gut is telling you that's probably not the best path.
Yeah.
And I would probably agree with that because if it was just like an article about what is personal injury and all of a sudden you're jamming in Atlanta personal injury lawyer, the context is not good. So even when it comes to internal linking, you want there to be relevance with the page that you're adding the internal link to. So for example, like if I'm writing about SEO jobs in Dallas, does it make sense for me to link to SEO jobs in Philadelphia? Probably not. Right. So, and I could, because it's about SEO jobs, so I could theoretically do it. Right. But the context there is just too off. Right. So I think there needs to be a very good match for the context in which is surrounding that internal link. And so you're absolutely right as far as your gut on that. Yeah. So I would definitely I'd be careful. Be careful on that for sure.
Would it basically just be at that point building I guess just a different asset and then from there linking to the location if it makes sense, just finding a way to pass that traffic through something that makes more sense?
Yeah, well, the thing is, if you're having a hard time finding relevant internal linking opportunities, that's usually a signal that you don't have enough topic authority for that specific topic, right? So, like for example, if I, SEO jobs Dallas, if I go and search for other Dallas related pieces of content, I have nothing else about Dallas on my site. I'm not just going to go to my Atlanta page and jam it in there. I'm just going to say, you know what? I need to build more supporting content around SEO jobs Dallas. And then now that I've built supporting content, the next, logical step is now I have internal link coverage, right? So I would actually view it as like you actually have identified a gap that needs to be filled is the way I would view it. I wouldn't just go and look around the site and be like, hey, this looks like a good spot. Let's just jam it in there. I wouldn't do that. No, keeping the cluster tight, I think is a good thing, personally. So yeah, does that make sense, Shay?
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. Anyone else? All right. Couple quick things, I guess. So we are deep into the new content optimizer. And when we say new, I guess we could argue it is definitely new because a lot of it's going to change. But obviously the biggest piece of this is the AI element of this. And that's going to be, Simon's working hard on it. So Simon, do you have any quick updates on that? I mean, what do you think our timeline is on that? If you could say ballpark, very conservative estimate, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, ballpark. I mean, I'll be super conservative. By the end of January, to give us some wiggle room. But we're hoping to get it up and running towards the beginning of January. And that will be, again, everything that Nathan has been showing as far as having to go to ChatGPT and maybe use some of these strategies to create outlines with the NLP keywords, et cetera. The whole idea is you'll be able to actually stay in the rankability environment, so you won't have to. Our whole goal is so you don't have to, you go to different tools and use as many different tools as possible. So the idea would be you'll be able to click a button, give us some information about what types of content, all this kind of stuff, and we'll be able to create a really unique, original piece of AI content that's already optimized with the NLP keywords, and not the way that it's been done in some other tools currently, which is essentially they follow a very cookie cutter approach. Like, oh, you want this many words? We're going to do this many paragraphs with this many sentences and have this and this. It's very cookie cutter. So all the content ends up being very similar. And even though it can rank still, which is the amazing thing about AI. The issue with that is you're not really tapping into the full capability of AI, especially with the latest releases. So we're really kind of relying on the AI to understand what we're trying to do and letting it do its thing. Long story short, yeah, January, and we'll definitely let you guys a whole bunch of other things we're going to release as well. A new AI outline, an outline editor. It's going to be it's a lot better than the current one we have. We're also going to have a bunch of goodies coming with the AI or the content optimizer editor, such as like, we're going to have a new version history. We're going to be able to see, if you have team members doing edits, they'll be highlighted. So you'll be able to see if team members have done edits. We're going to be adding a table of contents feature, which is really cool. So if you want it, like if you're working on a really big piece of content, you turn on the table of contents, you'll be able to see all the headings. So you'll be able to click on the table of contents and go zoom right down to that heading. So our model that Nathan and I always like to look at is Google Docs. We're not a $2 trillion company, so we'll probably not be at that level ever. But obviously, we like to use it as the ultimate example. And whatever they're doing well, we like to kind of say, okay, well, how can we somehow implement that into our editor some way so that it'll be better for your guys' content creating experience. So anyway, all those things are coming in January, and guys will let you know as soon as that happens.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Simon. Appreciate that. Osama, go for it.
Hi, Nathan. So my question is if the business is local and we are unable to find keywords based on the tag area, so which approach would we use? Like find national keywords, national level keyword, and inject add the location at the end. So what's your approach about that?
You're talking about as far as link bait specifically?
No, no, in general.
Okay. So you're saying if you're having a hard time finding search volume when you add the location modifier, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because if we find for US, we are able to find some keyword, but if we are talking about England or in UK, so it's very hard for us to find local keywords.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, unfortunately, obviously the US has the most data.
Exactly.
Just the fact. There's just more data. There's more to work with. And unfortunately, it creates an environment where it looks like there's a lack of demand in other countries or other locations, which is obviously not true, right? Like in other countries, there's plumbers and electricians and all these things. So they do exist. Now, obviously, there is some cultural and country specific professions that may not exist as much. I know personal injury is not popular in a lot of other countries. It's very popular in the United States.
Yeah.
Right? So there is some kind of contextual nuances there, but for the most part, it's tough because search volume helps you eliminate risk. Because if you don't have search volume, you don't have quantifiable demand that topic is something people are interested in, right? And so if you don't have the quantifiable data, then you are guessing. You are guessing to a certain extent. Now, you may not have a choice and you may have to do that. So, but you can turn it into an educated guess in some ways. And so the way that I would approach it, and I've done this many times where, let's say I'm working with a dentist in a really tiny little city. Okay. So a dentist in Baldwin, Missouri. Most people on earth have no idea what Baldwin, Missouri is. Okay. Mm-hmm. Tiny little city. All right. So when I go and search cosmetic dentist, Baldwin, Missouri, there's probably either no search volume or maybe 10 searches, right? Maybe max. And so, of course, though, I know that people in Baldwin are interested in that. I know that for a fact because people in Chesterfield, which is right next to it, are. So it's not like there's a significant change from a mile that all of a sudden people are, not going to be interested in that. So what I will do is I will look at the bigger city in that location. So if it's, Baldwin, Missouri, I'm going to look at St. Louis City and see if volume exists there. There's likely volume in the smaller cities, right? So that's a way that you can somewhat conduct an educated guess as far as that goes. And then the other piece of this to kind of go to the next level, in addition to the educated guess, is you build out the website using common sense. And I know it sounds like, okay, yeah, thanks, Nathan. But build it out with common sense with like, okay, these are the things that they sell. This is the place that they service. So you build it out that way. Cosmetic, dentistry, Baldwin, root canals, Baldwin, whatever it is, all the things that they do. Okay. You build out all those dedicated pages specific to their offerings. Then what you do is make sure you have Google Search Console installed, because what will happen is you're probably going to rank pretty easily because it's a low competition area, I would imagine. And what you'll start to see is even if you're in the top 100, you'll actually start to see this data. You don't even need to be number one. Google Search Console will start to show you that there's demand, right? You'll see impressions, you'll start to see clicks, and then you'll start to see the other types of keywords that people are searching specifically in that area. And when you find a little gap there, you go and create that new page, right? So, but the only way to know is you have to create the pages first, right? So this is a part of the process. So when you're working in these lower competition, or sorry, lower volume verticals, it's kind of what you have to do. Now there's one other technique you can use, but it does cost money, which is just run an ad campaign, a Google Ads campaign. So you run a Google search ads campaign, and within a week, you'll know if there's demand. I mean, very quickly. And you're not even, I mean, of course you can do it to drive leads and make money. You absolutely should. But I'm actually doing it more to gather the data and the intelligence so that then it can inform the SEO strategy, right? So a few approaches you can use.
Thank you. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay, good. Yeah, glad to help. Brandon, go for it.
Yeah. Do you have a heat map that you recommend, especially one that is HIPAA compliant, if you know?
Ooh, yeah, HIPAA compliant. I don't know about HIPAA compliance, but I do know. I mean, I use MouseFlow, so I know that can be a tricky part with the HIPAA element. But I've used Hotjar and I've used MouseFlow, both great tools. I just kind of prefer the MouseFlow simplicity. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep, my pleasure. All right. Anyone else? Everyone good? All right, cool. Well, we'll be back next week, guys. And as you know, one thing I do want to mention before we go is like, as you guys use the tool and as you're going through your SEO campaigns, like I know a week is a long time. Let's be honest here. A week's a long time. So like, just take note of stuff that you're like hurdles you're seeing, stuff you're encountering. Like, please maximize your time with me, like to the full, like juice me out, please. Like I want to be able to help you guys to the fullest extent. Like this is like, I will literally help you with your campaigns. So like, take advantage of this. This is like, first of all, I love doing this. This is just what I love doing. I love helping with SEO. It's just a very geeky obsession of mine. But the point is like, when you encounter the hurdles, let's tackle them on these calls. Let's actually like get through this, because you know, if you don't have to hire an expensive agency or whatever it may be, and you can just, you know, get through these things pretty quickly, I'd rather have you do that. So, and plus, if you, the most important part is use Rankability, like start to develop a habit, because it's just, I mean, I wish I could tell you there's like a secret to like success on any marketing channel, but I can tell you there is no secrets, basically. There's a lot of systems, there's a lot of process. But the one unique variable, it's not even unique, the one variable that's consistent across all platforms is consistent production. Just a fact. You want to grow your YouTube audience, consistent video production. You want to grow your X audience, consistent production. You want to get more traffic from Google, consistent production. Like it's not a huge secret. And I think sometimes people get super wrapped up in like, what's a strategy and what's it? Just, you're better off publishing and figuring it out along the way. It's a much better approach. And so that's what I'm saying with Rankability. Like as you're doing this, if there's anything in Rankability that's bothering you, please tell us. We are done. Like if something bothers me, I tell Simon like immediately. Right. So if you're feeling any type of friction or anything that's preventing you from acting, we want to know. You will not hurt our feelings. I will not cry myself to sleep if there's something that you don't like. So just please, it's very important because we want to make this the best that it can be. Osama, go for it.
Thank you, Nathan. These weekly sessions are goldmine. It's really boost, like increase the level of learning with you, especially. A quick question. Here in London, I was analyzing an agency, and like they're ranking on top spots. London SEO agency, all the major competitive keywords. And when I'm looking into their content, like I don't think so. They have all their blog posts are AI written, but they do have very strong backlink profile. So how is it possible to like just like I think they're just playing for like by the backlinks, not for the content, because all the content is just a fluff on their blog post.
Yeah.
So how this like because you really focus like your focus is mainly on content because if uh, data driven stuff, content creation and stuff like that, but those agencies are really not producing any content. They're just fluffing and still ranking on top spot and on very competitive keywords.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not surprised, to be honest, because backlinks are the most powerful ranking factor by far. It's like not even close. I mean, I would say these days, if I had to rank like the ranking fact, like as far as the things that we know quantifiably produce results, number one is creating a page that's highly relevant, that satisfies the intent for whatever keyword you're going after.
Yeah.
That's number one,
Exactly.
because without that, links don't matter. So that's number one. But then number two is probably going to be backlinks, right? Right after that would be, and there's two different like categories of this. The first category is the overall site authority, right? So to me, that's a really big one. How strong is the website as a whole? Okay. That's probably number two. Then number three is how many links does that dedicated page have, like specifically to that URL? Those are like top three. And then after that, there's other elements that start to come into play, which is the user signals. How are users interacting with that page? What's the CTR when you're ranking? Like all of those user signals are really important. And of course, the brand element, like do people actually have brand recognition? Are people doing branded searches? Like all these other elements. So these things all matter a lot. And there is, backlinks are so powerful that you could actually be pretty terrible at some of the other variables and still do well. That's how powerful they are.
Right.
And you'll find that to be the case a lot of the time. I mean, I've competed against so many people over the years, and I've had guys like objectively their content is really, really poor, right? But they're crushing it with link building. They're just going crazy. And I see it and I'm like, okay, they're winning for that reason. But based on the type of link building that they're doing, I can predict how long they'll stay there, right? And I've seen this story play out so many times where a competitor pops up real fast because they're really aggressive with link building, and then they're gone. It happens all the time, right? And so, they're powerful, but you got to be careful. And but they work, right? So I'm not super surprised by that. But when you build a house on cards, you're playing a dangerous game. And if you rely too heavily on backlinks to prop up your rankings, but you haven't taken care of any of the other stuff, you're playing with fire. I'll tell you that much. So, and what you described seems like a lot of emphasis on link building and link acquisition and growing site authority, but very little attention to quality of content, user experience, and the things that actually matter, right? So once again, can't control your competitors. You just, you can't do that. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. All right, guys. Well, that's it. We'll be back next week. Thanks.